All right, let's jump right into it. I'm so thrilled to have the brand strategy and marketing team here for this briefing today. Even as a media analyst, looking at how audiences interact with information right now is a total wild ride. And honestly, the data we're looking at is flashing some massive warning signs. Today, we're doing a deep dive explainer into a huge paradigm shift. We're going to unpack exactly why younger generations, specifically Gen Z and millennials, are drastically changing how they consume, or actually how they actively avoid information and news. If we want our brands to reach them, we have to understand this shift together. So let's start off with a pretty startling data point straight out of a recent AP&RRC study. Right now, only 32% of 16 to 40-year-olds say they actually enjoy getting the news. Just think about that for a second. That's a massive 21-point drop in just 7 years. Back in 2015, over half of this demographic actively liked staying informed. Today, it feels like a chore or honestly a burden. They aren't just jumping to different platforms. Their entire emotional relationship with information has completely plummeted. And you can really see the stark generational divide in this Pew Research data. It's basically night and day. For older Americans, age 65 and up, 73% actively hunt for news. It's a destination for them. But for the 18 to 29 demographic, that exact same percentage, 73%, say they mostly just happen to come across it. They aren't seeking it out at all. They're just bumping into it while scrolling through their feeds. It's become a completely passive experience. So here's our roadmap for today's briefing. We're going to cover 1. The news trust crisis. 2. Algorithms and media bias. 3. The digital fatigue epidemic. 4. Gen Z coping mechanisms. And finally, 5. Reaching a skeptical generation. Kicking things off with Section 1, the news trust crisis, a generational paradigm shift. The first major symptom of this shift we're seeing is the absolute collapse of trust. Barely a quarter, just 23% of these younger demographics have a positive view of the national news media. They are completely neglecting traditional narratives and the government updates that get pushed through them. Why? Well, they widely view mainstream sources and, by extension, the government entities they report on as heavily biased, agenda-driven, and prioritizing profit over objective truth. They don't just dislike the news. They fundamentally distrust the messengers delivering it to them. And look, this isn't just some perception issue. There are very real, systemic structural changes feeding this distrust. Take a look at this quote from the Brechner Center for the Advancement of the First Amendment. They found that the loss of local news ecosystems directly correlates with a spike in government secrecy. When local watchdogs disappear, administrative transparency just plummets. Officials become way more likely to deny or ignore public records requests. So, younger citizens aren't just imagining things. They are living in an environment where local government actions are increasingly hidden, and that naturally breeds massive public skepticism toward all institutions. Moving on to Section 2, Algorithms and Media Bias. Welcome to the post-truth era. Let's look under the hood at the mechanics driving this distrust. Researchers at Bournemouth University really highlight this concept of the post-truth era. As a marketing team, this is absolutely crucial for us to internalize. It's a digital environment where algorithms are literally designed to prioritize emotional manipulation, personal belief, and reactionary engagement over objective facts. The system rewards outrage simply because outrage keeps you glued to the platform. And Gen Z, they are 100% aware of this. To really drive this home, this isn't just some abstract academic theory. Let's ground this in a real human voice. This is a direct quote from an undergraduate in the Bournemouth focus groups. They said, "They just want us to be reactionary. Because when you react, you need to consume." Wow. They see the strings, right? They know they're participating in a profit-driven ecosystem that literally feeds on their anxiety and anger. When you realize the game is rigged to make you react, your default stance naturally becomes extreme caution. So, summarizing the findings from the Reuters Institute, this is exactly why distrust is the default setting now. 67% of people who don't trust the news point straight to bias, spin, and political agendas. There's this widespread perception that feeds are just polluted with extreme content pushed by algorithms, that sensation trumps facts, and ultimately that powerful people and institutions are just using the media to push their own economic and political interests rather than representing everyday people. And honestly, looking at our own feeds sometimes, can we really blame them? All right, Section 3, the digital fatigue epidemic, or the cost of connection. All of this algorithmic manipulation, it comes with a very real human cost. Data from Pew and AP&RRC shows that 57% of adults under 50 report being completely worn out by the sheer volume of news they encounter. It's an absolute epidemic of digital fatigue. It's like standing in front of a relentless fire hose of information. And remember, so much of it is negative, sensationalized, and aggressively trying to force an emotional reaction out of you. Furthermore, nearly 30% of millennials and Gen Z explicitly report that the longer they are connected online, the worse they feel. Just think about that from a brand strategy perspective for a minute. Your target audience is hanging out in a digital space that actively takes a toll on their mental health. Trying to get them to enthusiastically engage with your brand in an environment that literally exhausts them, that's a massive, massive hurdle for us. This brings us to Section 4, Gen Z coping mechanisms, how they're surviving the feed. So, how do they actually survive this toxic environment? Well, they adapt. The Bournemouth study identified this fascinating phenomenon they call algorithmic apathy. Now, when we hear apathy, we usually think laziness, right? But it's not. It's actually a highly calculated, passive approach to content consumption. Users will intentionally avoid interacting with or even fact-checking misinformation or sensationalized content. Why? Because they know that any engagement at all, even just pausing to read a debunking comment, trains the algorithm to serve them more of that exact same toxic content. They are definitely not going to log into a separate domain and look up sources. They're just going to skip right past it. They are fiercely protecting their For You pages. They literally curate their feeds by starving the algorithm of engagement when it tries to serve them garbage. It's a completely pragmatic self-defense mechanism against a polluted information environment. And we see these defense tactics playing out in the AP NORC data too. When they're faced with this fatigue, they take real action. 47% actively pay attention to the ways products and platforms try to trap their engagement. 27% set strict personal time limits online, and 23% actually go out of their way to use apps or settings to track their screen time. They are building walls to keep all that noise out. If our marketing feels even remotely like a trap, they are going to spot it instantly and scroll right past us. Finally, Section 5, reaching a skeptical generation, and what this implies for us as marketers. So what's the prognosis for us? Well, the good news is they absolutely haven't given up on reality. They just demand better from it. According to the AP-NRC study, here is what they are actually looking for. 69% demand verifiable, accurate facts. 61% want fairness to all sides. 57% desire true neutrality. They also highly value diverse points of view and transparent, solutions-based reporting. They do not want spin, they don't want you to stoke outrage, they want transparency, they want you to show your work, and they want real solutions. Let's quickly compare the old marketing playbook to this new reality. Traditional digital engagement was all about being loud, reactionary, and chasing those cheap clicks. It was fundamentally about interrupting. But a trust-based strategy, which is what we absolutely have to adopt moving forward, has to be transparent, neutral, and deeply, deeply respectful of the user's boundaries and their mental bandwidth. You simply cannot just shout louder at an audience that has specifically trained its algorithms to mute out the noise. Which leaves us with this final, crucial question for our strategy team to ponder today. In an era where younger generations view traditional digital engagement as a manipulative trap, how will our brand build actual, resilient trust? We have to stop relying on cheap hacks to gain the algorithm and start providing the neutral, verifiable value this generation is so desperately looking for. So let's get to work on that.